It's 4:45 in the morning, an hour later than I intended because for some reason my alarm didn't go off, and we're just casting off to leave Peterhead for Lossiemouth. Very calm here, but hopefully there's a bit of wind out at sea. Spinning around here, and about to go out of the harbour. The harbour master asked us to get our best speed out of here. And our best speed at 600 watts is nearly 3 knots. I think 3 knots is okay. Turn it up a little bit. There's the marina disappearing behind us. We've got the entrance to the outer harbour here we're just about to go through. We've got 800 watts going on and 3.2 knots. So we'll be out of the harbour in about a minute. And I've just put the mainsail up, although there's no wind in here at the moment. Just passing the harbour wall here. And we're heading out to sea. We're going north here and then round the corner, heading towards Inverness for the next 12 hours or so. We're going at 3.1 knots with about 800 watts going in. There's a tiny bit of wind here, but nothing to register on our anemometer. We're out of the harbour now, and because we've got a little bit of tide with us, with 750 watts or so, we're doing nearly 4 knots. And because we don't have much power left in the batteries, particularly for a 12-hour trip, I'm going to turn it down so we do just 3 knots. It's coming up to 6:30. There's still very little wind out here, although it's helping us a bit. I'm getting it just over 3 knots. I've turned the Torqeedo up a bit now, and that's so that we make Rattray Head when there should be slack water. And that's because there's a race around Rattray Head, and if it's slack water we can go a little bit closer in and so have a little bit of a shorter journey. That's the lighthouse over there that shows Rattray Head, about 7 miles away. Okay, at 10 to 8, that's Rattray Head there. This is exactly slack water according to my calculations, and although we've got a bit of a swell still, it's really quite calm here. We're 2 miles off as well, which you're advised to be to miss the race, and there's also hardly any wind, so we've had quite an easy time of it. We're going about 4.5 knots, and we're about to turn 20 degrees to the left. So fortunately, everybody inside is still pretty calm. Now the only thing I'm worried about is that we've used up about 1.5 kilowatt hours of battery, and since we weren't at full charge in the first place, that's probably coming on for half-hour battery power. So I'm going to turn the Torqeedo off soon, essentially around this point. And then hopefully the sun will come out, the wind will also pick up. We'll be able to sail on wind alone, and we'll be able to use the sun to charge the batteries. It's coming up to 9 o'clock now. There's Rattray in the background. We're waiting for the wind at the moment. It's only a couple of knots. We're only going at 2 knots. I've turned the Torqeedo right down because I want to preserve the battery. A bit worrying is that we've got some bad weather around. We've got it to the north and the south, and it actually seems to be converging somehow. So the south seems to be coming towards us and the north. But out here, out at sea, it's quite nice. And I've put some further solar panels out to charge our batteries. We're charging at about 70 watts at the moment. If the sun does come out, I'll put even more panels out and we'll properly charge the batteries. At the moment, we're at about half charge. Just gone 10:30, and the wind suddenly shot up from about 2-3 knots to 6-7 knots. So we're now making 2.5 to 3 knots. Soon we'll be able to pull up the Torqeedo, and then hopefully we get some sun as well and we can charge the battery. We've used maybe 2 kilowatt hours now, maybe even a bit more. So it's about 1:45 now. We've decided to go to Whitehills rather than Lossiemouth, and I think Whitehills is just around the headland, the last headland you can see there. The children have woken up and are feeling quite good. We've been sailing for the last couple of hours. We're doing about 4.5 knots, and we've got about 10 knots of wind. So that's 6.5 plus 4.5, maybe 11 knots of wind. Unfortunately, Jacqueline's not doing so well, but since the seas have calmed down now, the swell's gone, hopefully she'll start feeling better soon as well. And in terms of battery capacity, we've got 21.6 volts, which is not bad, and we're charging at 40 watts. As long as we don't have to use any more Torqeedo, we should be fine with this to get us actually into the harbour at Whitehills. It's coming up to 2 o'clock and there's a lifeboat going past us. Hope everybody's okay. It's 2:30 and we're about an hour and a half out. We've been sailing really well, going up 4.5, 5 knots. And I think this might be why it's called Whitehills, because of all the guano from the seabirds that nest on these cliffs. It's 2:45 and we got a little bit of sun, which means we're charging at about 220 watts. And we've got just under 1.5 hours to go. Now we're coming into Whitehills Harbour here. We've got nearly 1,000 watts of Torqeedo going, because we're about to turn into wind. We're about to take that in. We're about to turn up into wind and get into the harbour here. Finally, we've got into this tiny little marina and the sun's shining, so we're charging at about 150 watts. That's been the most difficult navigation I've had to do, turning around the dog legs to get in here. But the motorboat well, and everything's good.